right, so over the last year, a lot's changed for me. I've learned a lot, learned new stuff from my dad that I'm implementing to the program, as well as just have added to my collection of bridles. It's still pretty similar, but there are some changes, and I wanted to update you guys on that quite a bit. The biggest difference is going from using mostly the ported D to now a couple of variations of snaffle that I actually really enjoy. So first off, as far as spurs go, this is the spur that I ride in most of the time. Gunny Matheson made these for me. It's a 6-point spur. The shank is actually longer than I usually like my spurs, but since it comes out so low compared to another spur, you see the difference there in how low the rowel is. You can see when the bands are even how different the height is of the rowel. That means that this spur is going to go to them a lot faster than this one is. So when I have my heel down, this spur actually takes a while to get to their stomach. So this is what I ride in for the most part. And then sometimes I like to ride in this clover leaf as well. Tracy Brumley made me this pair of spurs, and the clover leaf is just duller than the 6-point. I like to use it. I have a lot of really, really feely horses, so I like to use these when I just want to kind of wrap my spurs around them and get them to not react, almost just dull down. I'm using these actually a lot right now. So as far as spurs goes, that's it. Sometimes I'll use a rock grinder, but I don't think I used one the entirety of last year. Like, I don't know. I just don't find myself in sharp spurs very often. Nosebands. Now, I still try to not use nosebands if I don't need them, but in this day and age, a lot of the Gunna Trashas and Spooks Gotta Whizzes, which is the most popular, are kind of mouthy horses. And so with those horses that I noticed that I'm gonna need to teach them how to not play with their mouth so much. Starting with the leather noseband, it's just basically the 2-year-olds. If I notice that they're pretty mouthy and anything of the sort, stick this on, June, July, something like that. Wear this for a few weeks, and then move to something like this. Same thing, this goes above the snaffle or the bridle. It's just a little bit more firm. This is kind of like a pig string and rope. This is just leather, so this has more bite than this. That's the next transition. And then the older ones, sometimes I'll use the drop nosebands. This goes below the bit, and it's not tight around their mouth. It has an inch or two of play, but it kind of stops them opening their mouth more directly than this being higher up on their face. Now, as far as equipment goes, right now I'm colt starting, so they're in the halter just for a couple rides. And then this is the next thing they'll go to. This is a colt starting Hackamore, which I really, really like. It's just a single lariat rope, brow band, throat latch. And then this is just nice, really long reins, so they're long enough for me to over, under, and whip to get them going forward. Leather popper on each end. Really, really nice piece of equipment there. Then, for a couple of weeks, I like to move to this rag Hackamore. These are really hard to find for some reason. They're not very common to be made, so we're just starting to get our new ones made, which are going to be on our website soon, and we should really be able to keep in stock after struggling for over a year to get them. I'll go into this for a couple of weeks, mostly because it's really soft. It's good to get them stopping because they don't give too much. It gets them planting their butt in the ground without giving their chin too much. And then also, if your horse rides good in this, that means that you've got them working pretty good because it's not pressure at all. It's just a soft rope on the back, rawhide on the front. Now, I used to get out of the Hackamore more towards June, July. I've moved that forward just a little bit because I find that I'm still able to get that stop connection, which that's the biggest piece of me not wanting to start in the snaffle, is that I don't want to lose that stop connection. So I find that if I get them really connected stopping, they get their sliders on, in March or late February, something like that. And then I can get them sliding in this by, April, late March, something like that. Around the NRBC is when I found myself going to the snaffle, actually. And I go to that snaffle because I get my horses turning way better in the snaffle than the Hackamore. A program like Casey Deary, he's really good in getting them spinning in this. For my program, struggle a little bit more with that. So I end up moving towards this smooth snaffle, which this is a Randy Paul, but basically it's got a smaller joint in the middle to give it some more feel. It's tapered down. It's probably, a 1/2 inch or something here, and then tapers down towards the middle. pretty standard size ring. I stay in this for probably a couple of months. I'm in that smooth snaffle until later in the summer. And then later in the summer, probably June or July until, say, October, roughly, is when I switch to the bridle. For those months, I'm going through my snaffles. Now, this one, like I said, I'll stay until probably later summer. This here is just a large twisted snaffle. This does not have much feel. I've never torn up a horse with this or anything of the sort. It really is just a small step above this. But when I start to transition them to a little bit more snaffle, this is what I move them to. This is a rod tusher. Next up, I go to one that I like quite a bit. My dad uses this a lot. That's where I saw this one. This is just called a half chain. It puts the pressure over their tongue, but it still puts the same light pressure over the corners of their mouth. So when we have this soft, smooth snaffle in the corners, it doesn't tear it up as if a full bike chain. I've never used a full bike chain, but this here is just more pressure than this twist here. Lastly, for the snaffles, and this is my favorite snaffle, Nick Dowers introduced me to this, it's a square snaffle. Now, there's different sizes of square snaffles. The smaller it is, the more pressure it is. This one, I don't know, it's probably a little less than ½ an inch in length from here to here. And I don't really bump with this snaffle, and that's why I struggle with snaffles sometimes, is I feel like when you pull with a snaffle, and Casey Deary talks about this a lot, to where when you pull with the snaffle, it's collapsing around their jaw, and they kind of tend to push into it. They get really heavy. So with this, I can hold, but it's got a little bit of the sharp edge to where when I hold, they don't get pushy into it. They actually respond to it more like a bridle, which I really enjoy. So I had a lot of them in this before I transitioned, but some of the softer horses only got to this or even this. Now it's time to transition into the bridle. This is around October if they're kind of ahead or on track. Some of them are just switching more towards November, December. This is the first one I go to. This is what I call a V Correctional. This is the softest bridle that I have. You see it's really wide here. The more tongue release, the softer it is. The narrower ports are more pressure. And then unlike other correctionals where it's sharp here, it's pretty dang soft. So, and it also has a short shank, which helps with lateral. So lateral is when you pull a horse from side to side, how much direct that pull is to the side versus more on their chin. Because when you look at a longer shanked bridle, something like this, this here is harder to make a horse go left and right because when you're pulling, it more moves like this, and then it puts the pressure on the curb strap. Whereas a bridle like this one here, when you pull here, it doesn't turn over as much as a longer shank. So that's why we start in short shanks. This is like the shortest shank I'll use. And then as they get more broke, usually we transition to longer shanks. So you'll notice as I go through these bridles, a lot of the shanks get longer because it goes not so much from left to right anymore, like a snaffle and Hackamore. We're pulling a lot here. The bridle, we start softening them up straight. So the lateral starts to go away and it's more leverage. After a little while of this, I would say I keep these this year in this bit for at least a month, if not maybe a little bit more. If they start to get a little heavy, this is just a little bit of an up from that one. You can still see it's still not very sharp here. It's sanded off and rounded, but it's a little bit sharper than this, a little bit narrower, but honestly pretty similar. You're not gonna feel a huge difference between these two. Now you might say, why did you start using correctionals when you used to be in mostly solid bits? Well, when I use the ported D and go straight to a solid bit, then that's all they've felt is that solid bit and they understand that. But now that I've really started to enjoy the feel of some of these snaffles and I feel like it's gotten my horses a lot more broke and handleable, then I need to go to something more similar when I put the bridle in their mouth. So I'm not gonna go to a solid bit, a solid mouthpiece like this, especially with solid shanks, because there's not much moving and it's harder for that horse to follow it. Versus this, the mouthpiece moves like a snaffle, and the swivel shanks allow me, when I start to pull to the side and they're stuck because they don't understand it's a new piece of equipment, this shank comes out here and helps me pull the horse that way instead of it being stuck here and being more of an awkward pull on that bridle. The third one, I'm in this quite a bit right now. It's like January. A lot of my 3-year-olds, I have a couple in something like this. And this here is a Pards Correctional. Really popular in the Reining is the Pards line of Correctionals. They make this, they make one with the ball on top, and they make one with the Cathedral on top. My dad uses these a ton. That's kind of where I get this from and get that feel from. And I like it quite a bit. This is for when they're kind of getting stiff here. Then this I'll last with for probably another month plus. Now, after this bridle or after one of the correctionals, I kind of make a decision. Do I think that that horse is going to feel better in a solid bit, or do I think that horse feels better in something like this, a correctional? So a lot of them, I'll transition over here to a solid bit. I'll take them for a test run in this. So this is probably my favorite solid mouthpiece. This is called a 299. Clapper was the original one that made this shape, and now pretty much every bit maker makes one. It's a larger bar. It's probably a 1/2-inch bar rather than 3/8 like some other bits. Has a lot of tongue release like we talked about with that correctional. And it's overall a really soft, solid bit. I'm moving some of my 3-year-olds into this now because there's some that I feel are getting a little wiggly in that correctional. And I overall like my horses being straight and a little bit stiffer and solid. So that's why I'm moving a few into this rather than staying in the correctional. If I like the feel of the correctional, I'll probably be in this Pards one for a while, and then come, February, the spring, when we start to do a little bit more, this correctional with the ball is really, really common. This, you'll see in almost every reining barn. It is quite a bit of bit. It's smaller at this joint and a little bit sharper than my other correctionals, like these two. So that's a little bit more pressure. And then it also adds the palate pressure into the mix with this ball. This ball touches the top of their palate, which starts to get more of that roundness. When Jim Edwards talks about bits, he says that the palate pressure is really good for horses that do reining or softness events, because using that palate really tends to make that horse give over the top, which results in rounder horses. Lastly, for a correctional, if I have one that maybe even feels a little stiff in this, it depends. Sometimes I feel like this correctional Cathedral is more than this. Sometimes I feel like it's less. That's why bridles are tricky, is because it changes from horse to horse. So sometimes I feel like this is more. Sometimes I feel like this is more. But I used this. I showed Get Groovy in the Futurity in this bit every time, just because he feels really good in it. He likes a correctional. I find the Spooks Gotta Whizzes like correctionals a little more, the ones that I've rode. Which is kind of interesting. And so Queso took this bridle bit really well. And to me, this one feels better with a horse that is stiffer and more rigid. This one helps me more with a horse that's not as stiff from the initial contact, but more when you get deeper. When I'm holding a horse and counter-cantering, when I'm holding a horse and pushing him into his face. If that horse is a little bit stiffer doing that, I like this here, versus this is for a horse that when I pick up, they just like to push. This single point of contact on the roof of their mouth, I think, is a little bit more pressure than this flat piece of contact on the top of their mouth. Now moving to the solid bits. As I already said, if I'm trying a solid for the first time with one, I'm probably moving to this 299, or this is a Kerry Kelly. Very similar. These bars are even bigger than 1/2 inch, like the 299. It tapers down to the mouthpiece, but this makes a horse pretty heavy. If I have a horse that really hides their face and whatnot, this is the type of bit that I would use for them, because if you start riding a horse with this, in my experience, for a couple of weeks, they get pretty in your hand. So I do like it for stopping sometimes with those stiffer horses. I like this quite a bit. And overall, it's a really good bridle. And then this one, like I said, is my favorite mouthpiece. This is on a Mayhew shank. And I'm getting some new ones soon that actually have a shorter shank and it's tipped a little more back. What that's going to do is it's going to slow down the signal. Really excited about those. I'll make sure to show you guys those when they come in. Those are my two starters. And then as I progress, sometimes I use a US port. or the most usually I use in a solid is this Cathedral. I haven't used it in a while, but this is a Mayhew Cathedral. It's probably my favorite Cathedral mouthpiece. 1/2-inch bar, so not as harsh as a 3/8 bar. I have this bit in a 3/8 bar as well, so that's if one feels heavy in this, I just switch them to the 3/8 bar. But this has that same shank. I'm getting one of the short shanks as well that I just explained that I'm excited about. But this is just more palate pressure and sharper here towards the tongue than this $2.99. These are the two solid mouthpieces that I use the most. Sometimes I use a US port, which is this, just kind of like this, just a little bit more narrow, a little bit spooned back, and a little bit more palate pressure. I just got this here. This Jared Burmester made me, and this is a $2.99 mouthpiece on a solid shank that I love. Sometimes solid bits come in a really long shank, and I just don't get along with that. My horses sometimes I think maybe give too much, or I ride really soft horses. So the shorter shank allows me to work with them a little bit better instead of having that shank get stuck on their chest. I started using this right now since I got it, and this is good for a soft horse as well. The stiffer horses, I might be sticking to more correctionals, something of the sort, but my derby horses like Wallaby of Big Star, Vintage Checks, they're really soft horses, so I'm using this right now, and I like this a lot. I'm also getting this shank, which I love, in a Cathedral just like this. That way I have the two options. I have the $2.99, and then if I need a little bit more, I can go to the Cathedral. I like the solid, fully solid shank sometimes because it's good for straightening horses up. It's good because it's less movement. I really prefer a solid shank, but I've found when I'm working on lateral motion and softness, usually I could use a swivel shank and get a little bit more done. So as far as bridles go, it's hard because it's different for every horse. There's no cookie cutter, but I do have an idea of what I like to do, and usually I can tell pretty early. I have a couple of my 3-year-olds this year, like I'm Gonna Be and On Tour. They both feel like more of correctional horses. I bet you come 9-10 months from now when I'm showing at the futurity and the late futurities, I bet you on Tour and I'm Gonna Be in those horses, I'm gonna be in something like this, or if I'm in a solid, more of the Cathedral, because they are stiffer horses just naturally, and in order to get the feel I want, I might go to a little bit more. So on a really soft horse like RM Cowboy Gunna Chick or my derby horses right now, I could see myself using something like this, or if I need more lateral, that $2.99 with a swivel shank, something of the sort. I really love this. This is my favorite solid mouthpiece at the moment, but it always changes. I guarantee you in a couple years, if I do an updated one of these, there's gonna be new bits that I've tried that I like, and maybe I'll use half of these, who knows. So that's where, as far as bridles go, it's really about trying to fit your horse. It's really about testing out what works for you and always evolving to find new stuff. There's always a horse that I'm riding that doesn't feel perfect in their bridle bit that I'm wondering, what am I missing? What bit should I try? So you shouldn't feel like you have it all figured out all the time. You're always going to be evolving and liking new stuff, but it is good to have a solid foundation like what I've shown here, which really works for me personally.